all coming together right here now. It's all coming.
Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody. I really appreciate seeing this room already filled up again. We're so grateful to have this We Are Change Colorado Community Center and do events exactly like this. We meet every Monday night and have a potluck and a meeting where we talk, current events. We host presenters and then plan actions. And so that's what we're all about, is actions. And this is an action. This is an action tonight because we're going to learn some stuff from Fritz Springmeier. Special guest. Fritz lives in Oregon. He came out to, specifically for We Are Change. I don't know if we can claim that. But we're really grateful to have him out here tonight. And this topic has been something that is, a lot of people don't like talking about it. They don't want to hear about it. But a lot of us are here for the truth, and we want to talk about it. We want to hear what the truth is and who is ruling the world. What is the Illuminati? We have a lot of talk going around the Illuminati in the music industry. Are these people Illuminati where they're throwing up these hand gestures? Are they Illuminati, or are they just working for the Illuminati? Who is the Illuminati? Lots of questions. And hopefully a lot of those questions will get answered tonight. I know a couple people weren't able to make it, and they've texted me with specific questions. I'm asking everybody to write down your questions. Please hold your questions till the end. I've seen a lot of events get ruined by dialogue. It just draws out these events for hours and hours. We're here to hear Fritz, and so we're going to give him all the undivided attention and time that he needs to get through what he needs to get through. And then if he has enough time, then we do questions. And I'd also like to ask that your questions stick to questions and actually ask what you want to ask and carry on. We're here to hear Fritz. If we want to hang out and talk more at the end, we will do that, and that'll be great. Let's make friends with people at the end. I appreciate everybody coming out. There's food in the back. We always have a non-GMO potluck here at the community center, so appreciate everybody who brought out food tonight. And really, without further ado, I don't have anything to read off of his credentials. I think his presentation here will speak for himself. He's the author of Bloodlines for the Illuminati. Fritz Springmeier, everybody.
Yeah. All right. It's a privilege to be here tonight with all of you. Thanks for coming out. This is your time, so I don't have anything prepared, but that's not a problem because I could talk for many hours. And we will cover a number of subjects, and we can get into the Illuminati. That we'll do. I was called to expose evil, and I was also called to give people hope. And so, if you start showing the dark side, you need to give people hope, to balance it out. Otherwise, you'll spin them into some kind of depression or something. So I try to call people to do noble deeds. And so there's a lot more to me than just being, some people call me Mr. Illuminati. There's a lot more to me as a person than just that. But I wrote a 7-book series on the Illuminati, and we'll get into who they are. By the way, there's a saying, if you're rich, you'll get richer. The rich get richer and the poor get poor. If you're information rich, you'll get richer information-wise. So it so happens that in the year 2009, that the heads of the Illuminati met in Gstaad, Switzerland, and the leadership of the 3 inner families passed the leadership to the next generation, right? Well, there was a generation gap there. The next generation realized the power of the internet. And so Jay Rockefeller, he was telling the older generation, with the internet, you can't stay in the shadows. This whole thing about sneaking around, nobody's going to know who you are or what you're doing, it doesn't work nowadays. So they realize that they're going to just have to be more open. And so the leadership of the Illuminati, believe it or not, because of the kind of information that I have in this book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, where I dialed in more accurately than anybody else, they actually respect me, surprisingly. So, people are concerned that maybe I won't have a long lifespan. But at this point, I don't think that the leadership fears me because, I've been exposing them since 1990, and they haven't lost their power. And they're very secure in their power. They have old wealth that's deeply embedded in everything. I'm not going to dethrone them, and they know that. And they respect me for what I've done. So we can get more into who they are and what they're doing now. There's been some changes since 2009 when they switched over to new leadership. The younger generation decided to prune things, and they took things down from 13 leading families to just 7. So they pruned out a lot of the families. The Bush family got discarded. They discarded anybody that they thought was shady and irresponsible and self-centered, that was just going to be out for themselves, corrupt, because just think about it. Like, if you're a general in the military, you want the people below you to be responsible. You don't want irresponsible people. So the Illuminati's gotten themselves leaner and meaner. That doesn't mean that they still don't have an agenda. One of their agendas is genocide of about half of us useless eaters, as they see it. Now, of course, some of us might look at them and see how much resources they use up and maybe think that they're more useless than us, But the parasite is looking at the host and calling us, the host, useless. So anyway, their plans that they've already started, they're already moving, they're already doing things along their genocide agenda, and within our lifetime we'll see a lot of people dead. I mean, I hate to say that. I mean, I don't have exactly good news all the time, but that's the facts that we're facing. But how do we deal with people like this? Because you guys are about dealing with the corruption, with tyranny, and all the rest of this, right? So how do we deal with that? The thing that is most important is to take the moral high ground. I'll give you an example. Oh, now let me ask a couple of questions before I get started, see where my audience is at. We got some Christians out there. Okay, so we got some Christians. Okay, how many people have been into court and experienced judges and the way judges act? Okay, cool. Then you'll understand this story. This story comes from Oregon, where I'm at. And there was a granddaughter, taken by the state, and then CSD was placing the child into homes where the child was getting sexually abused. But the grandparents and so forth couldn't do anything, because you know how the state is. It thinks it's God, and it could care less. It terrorizes us. So anyway, long story short, there's a day in court, and a lot of us who didn't like what was going on filled up this courtroom. So the entire courtroom, all of the seating was taken up by us, people like you and me, right? The whole thing. And the judge came in, and as you know, judges act like they're God. I have seen it so many times that you would think that this guy was God Almighty himself. And so here struts in the judge, and the guard says, "All rise." Nobody rose. At that point, the judge knew he was kind of in hot water. He takes his seat, and on the front row, the grandfather came right up to the judge and said, "I make a citizen's arrest for pedophilia." Like that. And the rest of that day, that judge was like a little mouse. I have never seen a judge so weak or I was just like, wow. The power of taking the high ground.
Right.
The power of taking the moral high ground. If you're going to try to fight evil with evil, you're not replacing anything.
Right.
You're just turning over one problem for another. So it's very important for all of us to examine ourselves, to start thinking, okay, how can I grow as a person spiritually? What do I need to be able to take that moral high ground? I'm going to tell you one more story, because this story, this event actually was life-changing for me. And I didn't realize that this was going to happen. It was just one of those things that got sprung on me. You know, life is what happens when you don't expect it. There was a man that I started working with. I was working at Iowa Beef Meat Packers, which we brought in thousands of head of cattle every day, slaughtered them. They kept them there for 72 hours while they cured, pushed them into the processing site where we cut them up. Right? And the eyeballs got sent to Japan, and you know, I don't know where the tongues went, but all the body parts got used, you know. And we carried knives that were scalpel sharp. So if there was ever any fight, both workers were instantly fired, because they couldn't have people fighting when they're armed like that, you know. And we wore chainmail armor. I had a guard here and chainmail here. I had chainmail down here. I have taken a 5-inch straight knife across my chest like that, because one of the jobs I did was boning rounds, which is a huge piece of meat, and you're working blind and you're working really fast, and so that knife slips a little bit, and you better have some armor. So anyway, that's the context of this story. And I started working one day with a guy, Larry. Didn't think anything of him. He was just like any of the rest of you, you know. I didn't see anything special about the guy. He was just an ordinary person. Nor did he try to draw any attention to himself. As I later got to know him over time, I realized he was an extremely humble person. And he had no self-centeredness. He was such a giving, loving person. And when he looked at you, you knew that he loved you probably more than you loved yourself. He could listen. He was a great listener. But it took me a while to catch on to all of this. But talk about somebody who could definitely have the moral high ground. His life was exemplary. There wasn't anything that you couldn't say anything negative about it. We worked as a team on the job that I did. It was boning plate bones, and the meat would come on a conveyor belt, and then I would take a piece, the next person take a piece, next person. You know, we shared the work equally, and we had this unspoken rule amongst us that as you started the day, you came out to your workstation and first come, first serve. You know, you get your workstation, first come, first serve. And Larry and I were brothers in Christ, and we enjoyed working and fellowshipping beside each other. So that we came out, and he, being sort of this Christ-like Buddha person, he put his gear there, and he went out in the hall just to sit there like Buddha. And but I'm a type A person, you know, so I've got a whole scabbard of knives, and I'm stealing them and getting them all perfect, you know, for the big event. So while I'm sitting there getting all my gear ready, here comes Teresa. She was the woman that worked with us. She was an ex-stripper. She was a wildcat. She would sooner stab you than smile at you, you know. She's a real hellcat. She comes and she moves his gear over somewhere else and takes his table. Now, one thing about Larry was, one of the things that he consistently did is he was assertive. You didn't walk over him. Now, we can go two different directions generally. We can fight, or we can flight, or there's a third way, which is the moral high ground, and that's to be assertive. And Larry knew how to be assertive and always get what he wanted. I never saw him not get what he wanted, every time. And not only that, but because of his winning personality, he got by with a lot of things that the rest of us wouldn't. As a worker there, you are not allowed to leave your station. But if the head of Iowa Beef came in, you know, the big honchos walking through, why, Larry was the type of person to leave his station, put his arms around them, start telling them jokes, having them laugh, and he was just a natural. He was a natural with people. And so he always had, and after I got to know him, I realized, you know, there are some people that actually are like Christ. You know, I'd never met Christ before, but I met Christ through Larry. It was really amazing. And he had this like foresight that sometimes you didn't even have to explain something. It's like he read your mind. Most incredible person I've ever met. So I knew that he would have the solution to whatever Teresa had just done. So I left my station there, and I went up the stairs and over things, and there was a big door because they kept the big area that we worked in cold. And I opened up the door, and there was a hallway, and he was sitting on a bench way down there. And he looked up. It was like he sensed me opening the door. He looked up, and I knew I didn't have to say much. I just said, "Teresa moved your gear." That's all I said. And I looked at his eyes, and I knew that he knew what to do about it. Most incredible, because I didn't. You know, so I went back to my station, and I'm like, how's he going to do this? How's he going to have a win-win situation? He always gets a win-win situation where he improves the other person and wins for himself. And I'm like, okay, I've got to figure this out. How am I going to, you know, and I'm just racking my brains. Everything I'm trying to think of fails. If he argues, it's going to end up in a fight and probably, you know, knives being used. I can't come up with a solution. Do any of you know what the solution would be?
Strip off.
Pole dancing, yeah.
I've asked that to a lot of people since then, and nobody has ever had a clue how to deal with something like that. That shows how incredible, an incredible genius Larry was. Okay, so it's time to work. Here comes the meat. Now, we are required to be at our station when the meat comes. Only Larry could get by with not being there. The meat's coming and he hasn't showed up. And so the meat's getting stacked up on the table that Teresa had left for him. It's being stacked up. At Iowa Beef, they put you under so much pressure, you did not want to get one piece behind, let alone a whole table, because it was so hard. You know, they worked your hands so hard that most people ruined their hands with carpal tunnel syndrome in a month. In fact, they figured the hiring, the way they were hiring, they figured a worker would last about a month. That's how intense it was. So it's pretty intense. So you don't want to let the meat stack up, but evidently Larry wasn't concerned about that. So this is going on for a little while. I'm wondering what's going to happen. Finally, here arrives Larry. The epitome of peace, calmness, Buddha attitude, you know, and he walks over there, totally calm, and just stands beside Teresa. She starts cussing every cuss word in the English language, laying her knife. She's just cussing up a storm, and he's just sitting there all peaceful. Until finally, after she's gotten tired of cussing, she walks off to the table with all the meat and leaves him his table. Now what's interesting is all the other workers in the plant, all they would have seen is him and her side by side. They wouldn't have seen any fight. They wouldn't have known because Teresa's cussing, well, big deal. What's new? And nobody would have known this whole drama that went on. And he taught her a lesson, and he got what he wanted, but he took the moral high ground. He just quietly took the moral high ground. And that's what I want to encourage all of us to do, is to take the moral high ground. Because these rats, these little slime balls, pedophiles, whatever, like this judge, they're going to be little mice if you take the moral high ground. Okay? So, let's go back and discuss Illuminati plans for us. Besides the idea of getting rid of half of us because we're useless eaters, which in their minds, they're doing something beneficial for the world, right? We've got all of these people that are using the world's resources, and they're stupid, they're lazy, they're blah, blah, blah. You know, they don't deserve to live. Let's cut the population down, improve things, right? So in their minds, they're going to improve things. Since it's us that are being culled from the herd, you know, it's not really, we have a different perspective on it. The Illuminati, as they trim things back, like you will read in my Bloodlines of the Illuminati book, maybe I'll hold that up so that just for, since this is going to be for the camera's sake. In this book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, you'll read that there was the Chinese Li family. The Li family was an Illuminati family. They're one of the families that got trimmed by this new generation of leadership. So they've trimmed it back to basically a core of European bloodlines. Okay? And the center of the Illuminati, London, Brussels, these people, not only do they not care about useless eaters, they don't care about America as a country. And they like the idea of America falling apart. And their agenda that they've been working on is precisely that. And so one of the things that they have planned for us, and we have been assisting them, we have assisted them in a lot of their plans, is to crash the US dollar. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. How many people understand what the significance is of the US dollar being the world reserve currency? Not everybody. Okay, so let me explain it. After World War II, you know, they had some meetings where the whole world was the economics for the whole world were being taken into consideration, and they made a rule that the US dollar would be the world's reserve currency. So like if you went and bought some oil or gas from Saudi Arabia, you're going to use US dollars to do it with. Well, that made sense because America had a lot of dollars. I mean, you know, I lived when I was a youngster in Nepal. If you wanted to make a big transaction using Nepalese rupees, there isn't that many Nepalese rupees. You're not going to be able to scratch together the money to do it. There are more US dollars overseas than there are here in the United States. It's a world currency. It's called the world's reserve currency. And it's what's used between different countries for these big economic transactions. And they keep their bank accounts a lot of times in US dollars too. Oil is priced in US dollars. Now what this means for the rest of the world is like when our Federal Reserve, prints up $1.5 billion a month, all of that funny money that's being created is inflating. Now if we were a little country like Nepal and we printed up 1 billion rupees, we would crash our currency instantly, because you'd have 1 billion rupees chasing just a very small amount of items. But we get by with it month after month because the entire world is basically being taxed, a hidden tax, by us inflating our currency. We don't have to pay for our extravagant printing of dollars. The rest of the world does. And they're tired of it. They don't want the US dollar to be the reserve currency because we're not financially responsible. And our leadership are a bunch of traitors, And they sit by and smile as they do this. You know, they smile at all the funny money that they make. And so we're to the point that they can't continue to print money like that and keep the dollar going. You can only do that for so long. We're at that point where we're at the cliff, you know. So you have things coming from several different directions. You have the Illuminati trying to ensure that we fail, and then we have our own country and our own leadership trying to seemingly ensure that we fail. So that's what's going to happen. We're going to see the dollar crash. And my inside sources say before Obama's term's over, the US dollar is going to crash. It's not going to be the world's reserve currency anymore. Already the BRIC countries, who are the BRIC countries? That sounds B-R-I-C. Brazil, Russia, India, China. They are a unit. They have come together as a bloc. And I had one guy he's a Christian, and because he's a good guy, he's an honest, but he knows how to make money. He was the financial advisor for these top Illuminati financial kingpins. And he told me how they're going to crash the dollar. He told me that China has secretly, this was several years ago, they had already negotiated all of the treaties with these other East Asian countries, like Singapore and South Korea are economic giants, right? So China has made agreements with them that when the dollar crashes, they will replace it with, and this what they have created was the red plum currency. They've already printed it up, stockpiled it, and everything, and made the agreement that all these Asian countries will join together and use this, just like the euro, you know, for all of Europe. Well, when I say all, I mean with some minor exceptions, like the British still have their pound sterling. So they have a replacement currency, but China now has stockpiled over 5,000 tons of gold. They haven't announced in the last couple of years exactly how much they're holding, but that's people that's been watching the movement of gold and whatnot real closely and asking other insiders. They say at least 5,000, probably more, tons of gold in China. They've been stockpiling other resources too, so that they will have the financial backing to their currency. It won't be funny money like ours is, which is backed by nothing but the good faith and credit and reputation of the United States. Which, I mean, the good faith and honesty of the United States government, well, you can see we're in trouble there. Russia has been working to dethrone us as the world's reserve currency. All of these things are going on behind the scenes, and it's going to culminate. And when we're no longer the world's reserve currency, it means that we won't be able to just print up billions of dollars of funding money, because there'll be some kind of accountability, and our money will start inflating, and it's going to be rough. The world as we know it will be over. Okay, so I'm just giving you a heads up. Now there's a chance before it happens that you can do what you can. You know, silver and gold will never lose their value. Silver's a good bargain right now. I'm not going to stand up here and be a financial advisor. I'm not going to tell you how to invest your money, but because I think that there are other people more qualified. But definitely think about what you can do in regards to what we're facing. Because this is, in my opinion, that's the biggest problem that this country's facing right now, is that our dollar's going to crash. It's going to lose its value. It's not going to be as bad as the Weimar Republic, but you know, we're going to have significant inflation compared to what we have now. And there's going to be major disruptions in the way things work. And so just contemplate this. Right now, there's 46 million food stamp cards. Okay. Now back in the 1930s, and some of you have probably seen the historical pictures, people were starving. They didn't have jobs. They went out and they stood in soup lines. And then they would feed them soup, right? We would have that right now if the government didn't have 46 million food stamp cards that they automatically update every month. All those people, and where I shop, it seems like 80% of the time the person in front of me is using one of those cards to buy their groceries. If none of those cards existed, we'd have soup lines. That's how bad it is right now, and it's being covered up, papered over with all of this funny money that's being printed. But we really are in a lot worse shape than we realize. And of course the government's giving us bogus figures. I'm sure most of you are aware of that already, that you can't trust their unemployment figures. Okay, so that's one of the things that we're facing. I'm sorry that that's the situation. I'm sorry that we're facing the crash of our dollar. We're facing, after that, we're facing things designed to reduce our population. If you look historically at what's been done, they'll have like a war, and they'll follow, or chaos, and they'll follow that. When there's a disruption of food supplies and stuff like that, then they follow with disease. So it's like it comes in waves, right? So another thing that I encourage you to do is start realizing how you can be healthy. They have hidden from us, the system, how to take care of ourselves and be responsible. And there's a lot of things that all of us can do to improve our health, all of us, and across the board. And I post generally, now while I'm on this trip I can't do that, but some of you may know already that I post an article practically every day on Facebook. These are, when I write an article, my criteria for doing it is this going to change the world? Is this going to be is this going to be really powerful in a positive way? I don't like to just write namby-pamby stuff. And it's a distillation of, what one person might write a book on. I'm going to write 5 paragraphs and distill it so it's really hardcore. And I've had a number of posts where I talk about things that we can do to improve our health. And across the board, a lot of these degenerative diseases and a lot of these other things, that all they do is manage, there are actually cures out there that people can get rid of those problems. So anyway, I just want to encourage you and give you hope that there are a lot of things we can do to help ourselves, but we have to be responsible. That's one of the things. This is who has to take care of things. Don't look to the government. The government's not going to take care of you. You're going to find that out pretty quick. All of these people that are, oh, I love the government. They give me all this welfare. They give me all of these benefits. You're going to find out that check's going to quit coming. And Big Brother's not going to seem so benevolent after a while, because you'll see that there's another side to Big Brother. And what happens when things fall apart? Well, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to realize there's going to be chaos, right? I've met enough people that said, I'm not planning for that, Fritz. If there's anything like that, I'm just going to go out and steal it. And so don't be surprised if somebody comes knocking at your door looking for whatever they need
With a gun.
with a gun. It's like that, the bumper sticker said, you know, when they criminalize guns, only criminals will have guns, you know. Also, as things start falling apart, there will be some benevolent countries out there that will want to help us, help police us. One of my posts recently was about what China has done in Mexico. Maybe some of you are aware of that. Does anybody here besides Liberty Lisa read my Facebook posts?
Don't do
Okay,
Facebook.
Pardon me?
Don't do Facebook.
Oh, I do Facebook. They have been watching me for years, so.
No, I said I don't do
Oh.
Facebook.
You can even go and read my articles even if you don't go to Facebook. There's some way to do it. I have a friend who said, Fritz, I don't do Facebook, but I discovered how to get to your articles anyway. So anyway, the Chinese came in and they paid billions of dollars. Chinese are rich. They paid lots of money to different people in Mexico, all the way from the top down, and they bribed them. And the cartels have been bribed. The president on down have been paid off to quietly allow the Chinese to create bases where they stockpile equipment, and each base has enough equipment for like an army, right? And so you've got about 15 of these scattered across, hidden up in the desert mountains in northern Mexico. And our intelligence agencies know about these. They watch them through human, they watch them with the spy satellites, the planes. They watch it, but they laugh because they think, well, how are the Chinese going to use these bases? First, they would have to put 500,000 men on ships and sail them from China over here. We're going to see them doing that. And then when they get over here and they start to move, this 500,000 man army starts to move towards our border, we're going to see them there. And then our Air Force will just supposedly take them out. So that intelligence agents laugh that this will be the 1,000,000-man death march of the Chinese if they try to do anything using their stockpiled weapons. Well, the thing of it is I say, let's look at history a little bit. What happened in the Korean War? They massed their troops, and we didn't do anything. MacArthur said, let's bomb them while they're massing. Nope, we can't do that. We gotta wait till they attack. So my guess is our government's gonna watch all of this and not do anything until they get across the Rio Grande border, right? Now we got 500,000 Chinese coming. And that is if we got into a war scenario. And what did we do in the Korean War? Well, we bombed them. We slaughtered them. Our planes went over with napalm and bombs and took out hordes of them. And what happened? They just kept coming. They just suffered the casualties and ignored it and just kept coming. And we ended up having to retreat. And what's blocking them? What kind of troops do we have? We got a few National Guard units to stop them. That's not going to stop 500,000 Chinese, even if we take out a lot of them with our Air Force. So, you know, it will be like a Red Dawn scenario. No wonder the Chinese government didn't want the movie Red Dawn out there. Remember, they just made a remake of it? Yeah, well, it was too close to home. But there's one scenario that might happen that's not really a war scenario, and that is if United States falls apart into chaos, how convenient they could move their troops over unilaterally without asking anyone's permission, give them all their gear, their tanks, their jeeps, their trucks, their armored personnel carriers, their weapons, which are all stockpiled, and move right into the United States to police our streets and help us out. So, and you remember Tiananmen Square? Anyone remember there were thousands of civilians that they just killed?
Overnight.
So, you know, I haven't forgotten that. Lisa's an artist. I have a little bit of artistic ability. I drew this like real demonic picture, you know, and I sent it to all these Chinese, you know, like their embassy and all these other, you know, written in Chinese that someone, you know, calling them to task for having killed all these people at Tiananmen Square. Because I had to do something. I just couldn't sit by and watch them do something like that. Because whatever happens to anybody else, you know, we're all in this together. You know, we got to either hang together or hang separately, right? So that's the way I feel. And while I'm talking about Lisa, I want to thank her because she's the one who put this together. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Illuminati. Some of you probably are a little vague on what that is. And a little bit of information about myself. I actually was concerned about the world system clear back like 1975. And then I felt a calling in 1978 to expose it. And I started working. The most important thing for me was to expose the corruption in the church, because I'm a Christian, and that's where I started. But anyway, I didn't have the maturity back then, and people talked me out of doing what I started to do. I only did it for like about 6 months, and then I backed off. It took about another 10 years before I got back to doing what I'd been called to do. I did thousands of hours of research into the power structure, and at the top of the power structure is the Illuminati. I did all this research, and then I got a really good break. And I'll tell how the break happened, how I got this, I guess you could call fortunate break. Since I'm a Christian, I see these things as divine coincidence, you know. But a good friend of mine, brother in Christ, who was a people person, was walking by these 4 women, and he overheard them say the word Illuminati. And Dennis, being a people person, he turned around and he goes, "Hey, if you want to learn about the Illuminati, you got to meet my friend. He knows everything. He's researched. He's written this big book. He knows it all, you know." And so they agreed to meet with me. Well, what they is 4 women that had been teamed together in the Illuminati that were a support team for each other to escape it. They were trying to get out of it. And so I came into their life, and up to then I had been researching the Illuminati from an outsider looking in, you know, looking through the window, trying to extrapolate what's going on. But now that I started working with them and trying to help them escape, they couldn't say a whole lot because they had the trauma-based mind control, which they would go into suicide programming if they talked too much. But because I knew a lot already, they could say a little bit here or there. All I needed was little tips here and there, and I could run with it, you know. And they told me 2 topics that were very important. One was the bloodlines, the value of the bloodlines, and the other one is the trauma-based mind control that they were all subjected to. They had their minds fractured. They were multiple personalities. And that's why the Illuminati can do so much, and we don't realize it, is because there will be a front personality that will be a good person, and the satanic altars that are going to satanic rituals are deeper in the mind. So these people are not like us. They're nothing like us. In fact, they're really human robots. And it's been insanity creating insanity for thousands of years. And everything that we knew about people, everything we thought of how people act or think or whatever, has been obsolete our entire life. The world does not work at all like we thought it did. It works entirely different. And so I bumped into all of this, and then I had to learn through the School of Hard Knocks how to help these people, because I knew nothing about how to deal with program multiple personalities. And boy, that was an adventure. There's a movie out, Enemy of the State, where this guy is chased around. That was my life for 5 years. It was absolutely crazy. And in fact, when they finally framed me and sent me to prison, I was like, I get a vacation. I get some, I can finally spend a little bit, I've been donating all my time to save the world and these other people. I finally get a little time for myself and a little bit of a breather here, because it was absolutely nuts. I had gumshoe CIA types outside the house all the time, you know, people trying to kill me, the whole schmo, you know, and eventually I ended up having to move in to Cisco. Cisco was one of the 4 ladies.
Wheeler?
Yeah, and I moved into her house because it was the only way to take care of her. And I might backtrack. Before I moved in, what happened is a couple of my friends were ministering to her, and I was kind of off, kind of at a distance, you know. I was working with one of the other ladies more, and I got ready to take a trip in July of 1993. I took a trip all around Western United States, doing a whole bunch of different things. Business, research, as well as family, going to family reunions and stuff. And right before I was to leave, the day before I was to leave, this guy, he was naval intelligence. He had been coming over to my house. He was a multiple, but he was a handler. But anyway, he had been coming over to my house, and he comes over. He's in a tizzy, and he goes, Fritz, they're going to kill me. You know, this is like some Hollywood movie. He goes, Fritz, they're going to kill me. Take this briefcase. You know, what am I supposed to do? Okay, I take his briefcase, right? But I can't stop my trip. My whole family and all these things that I'm going to do, so I go on my trip. Well, while I was the apogee of my trip, clear down in San Antonio, Texas, where my dad lives, they came up to this guy, according to witnesses, he was on a park bench, and these gumshoe CIA type guys came up to him and stuck a gun in his mouth and shot him. And then the police grabbed the body, cremated it within hours, and ruled it a suicide. I've seen them do that with other people too that were friends of mine. So anyway, when I got back, he was dead. And they grabbed Cisco, and she had had 5 years of deprogramming and therapy, and they took her to a programming center and erased all of that work. So when I got back, 2 of the people, you know, that had been trying to get out of the system had that happen to them. And so that, when I finally figured out what they had done to Cisco, then I moved in, because I realized the only way she was going to make progress is if someone was there 24/7 watching. And sometimes I had to stay awake like 2 weeks in a row because it was so nuts. In fact, this guy, he said he was ex-CIA. He moved in next door to the house next to us. And check this out, if this isn't a little strange. On the 2nd floor, he's got this room, and it's scarlet red. And he leaves the window open and the light on 24/7. So that across from her room is this, a few feet away from her room is this room that has nothing in it that's just scarlet red. And so we went over to meet him, the CIA guy, right? And he gave us a tour. He has this big old long anaconda snake, right? That's his pet. And he goes, now don't worry, he likes to go in the plumbing. If you're sitting on your toilet and he comes up through the toilet, don't worry.
Yeah, right.
And then he had big spiders and stuff. Well, that was our neighbor. So my life that was the way my life was. Everywhere my car went, somebody was following me. I go to a doctor. She just happened to be a friend of mine before I started exposing the Illuminati, right? She is a Christian sister. And then after I went, went to the doctor, she calls and says, after you left, these CIA types came and were grilling me to tell them what your visit was all about. See, they were all over me all the time, and I couldn't do anything or go anywhere where it wasn't being watched. So that's why I'm not afraid of Facebook. They've been watching me for years, and the head of the Illuminati gets a report on me. They've told me he gets a weekly report on me. So, so that's where that stands. Let's go back to look at how they've structured the control. People that are novices to the subject, they ask me, well, or maybe they ask other people too, they say, well, when did the Illuminati take control? No, it's not. That shows that you don't understand how it works. These are the bloodlines that go way back to the pharaohs, to ancient Babylon. These were the people that were considered gods back then, and they still consider themselves gods, and they've kept track of their genealogies. Even today, I was doing some genealogy research on these bloodlines, and they go way back to antiquity. They're the ones who created this system, okay? And to control everything, they created 6 systems of this. The system's broken up into 6 major systems, which is a double pyramid. And then each of those systems is set up to make us dependent on them and to make them money. And so think about it. The education system. Okay, we're dependent on them. We're not to think for ourselves. And it's to dumb us down. It's not to educate us. And then the health system, you know, that's to make us dependent on them, not to make us healthy, but to make them money and us dependent on them. They do a lot of things that actually cause a lot of the problems that they come along and then solve. You know, I was amused because this Frenchman, he came over and he's looking at a maternity ward and goes, wow, American women let the doctors do that stuff to them? You know, because he realized that what they were doing is causing the problems that they come along and help the women out. And then these women are, oh, I'm so glad that the doctor was there and I was in the hospital. What did we do for thousands of years? Women had a midwife and had their babies at home. You know, but if you let the medical system and the doctors screw you up, then you're going to need the hospital, you know. And then they're doing such lovely things. They've quit this now. Yanking the kid out with the forceps, you know, and drugging the mom so that the baby's all drugged up. They're doing all this stuff. And so think it through, people, and realize that these systems were put in place by, if you want to call them the powers that be, but actually sitting at the top of the pyramid is the Illuminati. But not everybody in the power structure is a member of the Illuminati. The next level is called the network. And a lot of those people are just, what's the word for someone who wants to buddy up next to power? You know, they're...
Psychopath?
Yeah, they're... Yeah. They're thinking, they're out for themselves, you know. They think that if they betray the rest of us, you know, for a career or whatever, that's... Yeah, right, trolls too.
Troll, not troll.
Yeah. So there's the network that helps them out. And, you know, I've even had somebody that I was talking to about the Illuminati, they go, well, then that's the team that I want to be on, because I want to be on the winning team. Okay. Well, there's a lot more to the Illuminati than I'm going to talk about tonight.
Can you tie the covens in?
Well, yeah, you have different levels of covens. You know, some of your Satanists are just your garden variety, the lowlifes out on the street that you know, really don't amount to anything. People object when I call the Illuminati Satanists, but I worked with deprogramming, I worked with the programming and met hundreds of these program multiples. And across the board, these people have satanic altars that participate in satanic rituals. So when I say that the Illuminati is into Satanism, that's not my opinion. That's what these people are involved with. That's who they worship at the deepest levels, is Satan. Coming up a little bit above that is the concept of Lucifer and Gnosticism. So the Illuminati are Gnostics, and they go back to the Albigensians, the Cathars, the Gnostics, and the idea is your good deeds have to balance your bad deeds. Now there's a number of people out there, and if you go to biographies, you'll see that their occupation is listed as philanthropist. What is a philanthropist? A philanthropist, this is what his occupation is to give money away, right? What kind of occupation is that? Giving money away? You think of an occupation as earning money, but no, these people give money away. Why? These leading philanthropists are trying to balance their good deeds with their bad deeds because they're Illuminati Gnostics. Okay? So, let me tell you, some of the greatest good deeds that are being done around the world are being done by these Illuminati kingpins. They do a lot more good than the rest of us, you know. But they're balancing the other side of the equation. So during the day, they're great. During the night, they got their other side to them. They're a bunch of vampires. So, you know, sacrificing somebody and drinking their blood. Why would someone want to drink blood anyway? How many of you are familiar with adrenochrome? That was one of the things that I was privileged to expose back in 1991. When you're frightened out of your wits, the body releases adrenaline, and it comes in the form of adrenochrome, and it pools right here for a second in the base of the neck. So if you're skilled like they are, they can sacrifice the person at the right moment. That adrenochrome will be pooled at the base of the neck. They can take and extract it, and they have the most powerful natural drug, and that's been a very top secret. They can sell it, but they also can use it. But you drink the blood of someone who was scared to death, and you get a rush, a natural rush. So you're not having to deal with like cocaine addiction or something. Of course, eventually you probably get addicted to blood, some of them are, but that's another issue. Let's see. So I'm going to open it up for questions, and I love questions. So the gentleman clear in the back was the first to raise his hand.
Hey guys, if we could formulate this to have people kind of walk up and ask their questions for the video's sake, I think this would be a really great chance.
Good idea.
Everybody's in public anyway, you know. So yeah, if you want to walk up right here and ask a question, or you know, make a line. Anybody? Or
okay.
Can you say anything about the Gnostic Archons?
Well, in recent years, the term Archon has been used. The previous term that was being used was demons, fallen angels. One thing, the question was for me to address Archons. And in working with people that were in the Illuminati, asking them about their, you know, what went on in their coven rituals and so forth, they would say that there were these beings that looked like the aliens that would participate in their satanic rituals. You know, they would talk about Satan appearing. They would talk about using demonology and spirits in the programming, and on and on. So there's another level to all of this beyond human level, and it makes total sense because when we look at the Illuminati's agenda, it's not a human agenda. It's anti-human. It is, to the core, it's anti-human. It's destruction of the human race. Look at all that they're doing. You know, polluting the planet, polluting our bodies, on and on. So it makes total sense It's really the only thing that makes sense is that the Illuminati is being controlled by non-human entities that hate the human race.
Well, I wanted to ask you, did Cisco or any of these people give you any indication of that? Because the archaeological evidence appears to me that this planet is very possible that the Illuminati and these people are being controlled by outer planet entities that are on this planet and possibly have been here for hundreds of thousands of years. So when you go back to the ancient civilizations, the 5 that I've been able to pretty much wrap my head around, I just wondered if you in your research have run across that and have they specifically given you any idea where they're from, who they are, because it's obvious to many of us that there's a controlling order going on in the world here, which has to be above these guys. They have to have these people compartmentalized, and they're doing their bidding. The rest of us are just goyim. We're just slaves. We're just bond slaves. So if you could answer that, that'd be great.
Yeah, if you go back and look at what they call a great civilization, let's say we're talking about the Romans or we're talking about India, you know, they're being controlled by spirits. They're so yeah, there's obviously another level above humans that consistently appears, and the question also was raised, where do they come from? I believe from all the evidence I've seen, this is interdimensional. The whole idea of these are coming from some far off planet is just ridiculous. In fact, one of the problems that we have going on is on a lot of these topics, like let's say flying saucers, UFOs. I prefer the term flying saucers because UFO is a biased term, making like we can't figure out what it is. It's a flying machine, right? And by saying UFO, it makes it sound like only aliens can run it. Ever since flying saucers have been seen, there was a campaign to get the controlled media to link aliens to flying saucers. Nobody ever says, could it be that these are government run?
Exactly.
And the government has intentionally done, I know this is a fact, they have intentionally pretended to be aliens and other things. Now, why are they doing that? Well, and I'm not saying that there aren't other beings, but I'm saying that all of the aspects of some of these topics are being controlled and mixed up so that they have got the soup so confused. It's like, let's say the tree of truth is right here. They don't chop it down. They give you a forest, and you're so busy with all these other fake trees, you never see the real one. That's what they do. In fact, they've even in their own writing said, that's how we're going to do it. We're not going to get rid of the truth. We're just going to conceal it with so much BS that nobody can find it. And that's exactly what they do on these subjects. So I think when all of those different disinfo agents out there with all their wild theories and stories, if we remove all of that and we get down to the core of what's happening, we've got some interdimensional beings that hate humankind, that are controlling these traitors to the human race. But when I say traitors, this is a generational thing. You're born into it. It's not like you decide, okay, I'm going to betray the human race today. When you were a little child, they started mind controlling you, and they forced you into the coven, and you never had a choice. It's not like you wanted to do that. You become part of this big organization, and that's where they're going. And you're told, don't break the circle. You know, this is what your family tradition is. You know, be a team player. You know, go along with. And then of course there's all the baloney about how this is to help the human race. You know, and this is going to improve things. So there's always this twisted. You know, everything gets turned upside down. So anyway, that's probably a good enough answer.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. I have two short, quick questions.
Okay, let's see.
I'm curious about the Pope, the new Pope. Do you have thoughts about the and is it possible for any of the children of the Illuminati to break out of that condition and actually become a genuine person? Does that ever happen, or is that unlikely to happen?
Okay. So I believe the camera picked up both of the questions. The first one was about the Pope, if I would address that issue. The second one was if anybody ever gets free of the Illuminati. And so going back to the Pope, one of my crosses to bear has been that there's all this disinformation, and understand, people that my sources, insiders, they tell me, yeah, the Illuminati's feeding this baloney to these truthers, and they're then throwing this stuff out, and they're laughing at us that we got all this confusion and nonsense out there. You know, and one of the things that has happened is this theory that it's one group, and so there's this, one of the theories out there is the Pope controls the world and everything is a Catholic plot. And they see a Catholic or a Jesuit underneath every rock around the world. Well, there are a lot of centers of power around the world, and trust me on this, the Catholic Church is not controlling them all. And I have written like 3 articles recently to try to disabuse people of this wrong thinking. And one of the things I did in a recent article is I talked about in the 1800s, the Catholic Pope was like a king. He owned land in Italy called the Papal States. He wasn't in the position that he is now where he just has the Vatican. He had all this land that he was the king over. And Italy sent troops and started conquering that. And the Pope's troops weren't strong enough to defend his territory. So when they were approaching Rome, the Pope, and Rome had at that time 250,000 citizens. And, Rome was the center of Catholicism. And the Pope called for volunteers to help his army defend Rome. He got 500 volunteers. Now, this is the guy that's supposedly running the world. You could go time and time again, you could look at instances, see how Napoleon conquered them. For 95 years, the Pope was held in the Vatican and never left it. We're not even cognizant of that because the popes now, they go all over the world, and we don't even realize that they stayed in the Vatican for years and never left. The Rothschilds in the 1800s became their bankers. Believe me, a banker controls a person. And the Vatican has had a lot of financial crises. And if you want to read, there's a book, In God's Name by David Yallop, and he goes in and talks about how the Catholic Church, in order to stay financially solvent, is in league with P2 Freemasonry, regular Freemasonry, and the Mafia. And they're doing all of this criminal activity to try to keep from going bankrupt. This is not an organization that's running the world. This is an organization that's scrambling to even exist. But in I think it was 1992, I came out with a list of 200 Vatican officials who were Freemasons. I gave their secret initiation dates, their secret Masonic names, the whole thing about these guys. There were 2 people that died to get that information. 2 people. So, I feel like it's information that should have been treasured by the world. Quite frankly, the reception that the information didn't get the honor, the treatment that it deserved. But the point is the Vatican's run by these Freemasons. Okay? Now, in a recent article, I gave people the exact mechanism of how the Pope and the Black Pope are controlled. The United Grand Lodge in London, and you can look it up on the internet and you'll get their picture. And within that, there's like 57 temples within that Masonic headquarters building. And the Illuminati give their instructions to the United Grand Lodge, and they send the instructions out to the 6 major places. The Pope and the Black Pope get their instructions through the United Grand Lodge. Then the leaders of the Sunni Muslims, like the Grand Mufti, and then the Grand, in Jerusalem there's this Grand Rabbi. He receives his instructions through the United Grand Lodge. And then Protestant leaders over here. And my books have consistently gone through. For years I've given information exposing how the Illuminati controls these top Protestant ministers. You know, so the problem I have with people saying the Pope's running everything is it creates this false dialectic. Everybody's looking over here. Oh, the bad guys are the Catholics. The Protestants are the good guys. Or the Seventh-day Adventists are the good guys. No, there isn't. That's a false dialectic, people. Evil's everywhere. Don't put a label on it. You know, it doesn't matter what group it is, there's going to be problems and evil there. So don't reduce it down to some simplistic formula. And of course the Illuminati just laugh at, they encourage this kind of nonsense, you know, people thinking that everything's been done by the Jesuits. No. Granted, the Catholic Church is very powerful, and the Catholic Church is not a nice organization. It can be very nasty, right? But they are not the head of the pyramid. Okay.
It's great to have a chance to meet with you again, Fritz. As you know, you drove from Portland all the way down to the San Francisco Bay Area and spoke at Vallejo over there at my event. We had 2 rooms going, 2 cameras, and the man that rented those 2 cameras and all those videos to film everything, you talked too much about the Catholic Church. He stole all my stuff. I didn't even get a chance to even look at it. So
that's happened in other places.
I'm sure,
too.
a lot, yeah.
Yeah, the Catholics were running the cameras in some other talks of mine, and they've always taken them.
Yeah, and so, of course, I'm anxious because at that time you brought Cisco down, but she didn't speak, as you know. But so, how is she doing now? The last time I saw her was 2000 right here in Denver when she spoke at the 2nd Global Science Congress, and for 5.5 hours we spent together. But how is she doing? I haven't heard a thing about her. She gave me her phone number, and her sister wouldn't let me talk to her.
Well, she has never been really open to like dealing a lot with the public. She prefers her privacy. So that's going on. 2 years ago, she was in a really bad car accident. And then she just got recovered from that, and then she was in another one. So she's been in a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and you know, I was gone for 8 years, incarcerated, and so I haven't had much to do with her for many years.
Yeah.
You know, I have spent some time with her since I came back to the Portland area, and you know, she came out with a book, so that's one of the things that she did. Oh, I think about 2008, she came out with a book.
Is it under her name?
Yeah.
What's the name of it? Sorry to ask it.
No, I know it. If I can just pull it up, it's.
We use her name on the internet.
Well, yeah, it's got a title related to the the 4 horsemen, but that's not it.
Well, we can Google it to find out. That's okay.
Something to do with like one of the horsemen.
I got lots of questions for you, but I just want one more, and then I'll come back to the end to the time. The last thing is, in 1967, I bought Myron Fagan's 3 records on the LP records, the big ones, double-sided, about the Illuminati. And have you ever seen that set? It goes in the Council of Foreign Relations as the United States
Yeah, I knew that
secret
he
government
exposed the
running us
CFR.
for the Illuminati. And would you address the Council of Foreign Relations and how they tie in with the Illuminati? Please. And I recently did an article on this. It was
how the Illuminati comes up with policy. And there's a structure that they have, or a template that they replicate in all these different major countries. And so what they do is they have received an agenda. They have 40-year plans, 20-year plans, 10-year plans, 5-year plans. And then they start working things to line up with those plans. And if you go back and look with a fine-tooth comb in history, you'll actually see you'll see events preparing things for these plans. For instance, before we created an aircraft carrier, there was a novel that was written that it could very well be a history of World War II, about how the aircraft carriers and the Japanese and our navies dueled it out in the Pacific. So, you know, these things have long-range plans. So they know where they're wanting to go. So they know the topics that they want researched. And the way they do it at all levels, even down to the local PTA level, is they want to get you involved so that you think that the decision was yours. Now, the decision may have been made 40 years ago, but they want you to feel part of it. And so they will give their college think tanks, Stanford Research Institute, Hudson Institute, these colleges and think tanks of theirs, they will give them topics to research. And they will research it for years. They will even come up with big tomes of research. And then they go to the next level, which is like Council of Foreign Relations. You know, another institute is like Brookings Institute. When you see Brookings Institute, Hudson Institute, or someone involved in that, think Illuminati, right? Okay. Or Stanford Research Institute, or CFR. This is Illuminati. It doesn't mean everybody in the CFR is an Illuminati member, because what they have done is they've taken, and they have some members as window dressing. So they're just people that, you know, kind of like your network type people that don't care what they're associated with. It gives them a nice resume. So for years they will research these topics, come up with conclusions. Now those conclusions can be used in several different ways. One way is politicians, when they start making laws, they will, in their discussions, they'll say, well, the Stanford Research Institute researched this for 10 years, here are their conclusions, and you know, of course, nobody's even going to read these big tomes. They're just going to listen to whatever the conclusion was. So that's the purpose of the Council of Foreign Relations. It's a way of including everybody in the decision-making process, and it's a way of making an intelligent decision, because even if you know what you want to do, you may want to flesh that out with more research. So by the time it gets done, it's been well researched and well thought out, and it has a lot of people supporting it because they think this is the decision that we're behind. It happens on the PTA level too. You know, they already know what they're going to do, but they get the parents involved, so the parents think that they're part of it. So that's the idea there.
I've got 3 quick questions for you, real quick. First of all, can a person like me identify the 7 banking families in 2008 who are in charge?
Okay, let's deal. Can the top families be identified? Well, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are so obvious.
Right.
It doesn't take. I mean, they're right there. You can't avoid. I mean, everything involving power, you start seeing the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Another very powerful family is the DuPont family. We just had one of the DuPonts, and he buggered his own son, and the judge didn't even give him anything. You know, and then somebody was upset and threatened the judge. But these people are immune to prosecution. They're above the law. They commit murder and anything else, start wars, and they get away with it. So there are 4 of them. And then
Well, my second question is
And Van Dyne is
Van Dyne?
Van Dyne?
Is there one in Israel?
No.
Okay, so this Masonic thing you talked about where they go to all the leaders, the only connection there is the Grand Rabbi in Jerusalem?
Yeah, in
That's,
Jerusalem.
that's the only connection that you know of?
Well, no,
With
no.
Israel.
Israel was created by these people. The Rothschilds funded the creation of Israel. They
Right.
funded Zionism. The whole thing was, that was one of their agendas. They wanted Israel for several reasons. One reason is because they were going to create turmoil in the Middle East, and if they got all of these Jews to kick the Palestinians out, then they would create this
An ulster is what they call it. An ulster.
yeah,
Just
well,
like the
yeah,
orange and the green.
exactly.
That's right.
I'm going to call it an ulcer. It's a
Yeah.
problem area where you've got all of this hatred and tension, and they wanted that.
Right.
So that was a long-term Illuminati goal that came to fruition. The instructions to the Israeli government come through MI6,
Okay.
and they get daily instructions through MI6.
BB and the boys, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and MI6 has been very active in the Middle East all along. They created the Muslim Brotherhood, and as you know, our president here, we're living in poverty, and he's giving billions of dollars of bribes to the Muslim Brotherhood leadership over there in the last few years. You know, and anyway.
And we all know Albert Pike, went to World War III between Islam and Zionism. So,
Right. But my latest inside information is that they're pulling back from doing that, and they're going to create it a different way. So we'll see. We'll see what transpires. They can change their mind if they want. It's their world system.
And then the third question is, what do you think about Iceland? They apparently kicked them out. Do you agree? Do you think that really happened, or?
I don't see them being concerned about Iceland, so it's like maybe it's really not a serious threat. It's sort of like me, I'm doing all I can, but I'm really not a serious threat to their power. And what Iceland did was kick out the bankers and took things back for themselves.
They
got
actually
rid of
hung
all
a
their
couple.
debt.
People here don't even know that. But
Right.
They hung like 49 of them. And that's not well known here.
Yeah, explain that. Speak
Well,
on.
of course, they're not going to allow that in the media. But they strung them up.
They actually hung them up.
Yeah, they hung them up.
Yeah.
And when I was over there, it was in the newspaper that Interpol went in, and in the newspaper, which is, of course is still controlled by them, they said that they sent in Interpol to get those bankers out because they were such nasty little guys, right? But the real spin is that they were afraid they'd hang those bankers too. So Interpol is Rothschild's private international police force. That's who Interpol is. So he sent his boys in to get his boys out of there before they hung even more of them. So
Interesting. That makes me think of something else that I'm maybe. But first, I have to ask you guys: how much time do I have?
Keep going.
Keep going. I got all the time I
Right,
want.
good.
Okay, then I'm going to tell a story. Okay. The 4 women that had been teamed together that I talked about that were trying to escape from the Illuminati, that I was trying to help escape, they told me about the top headquarters for the women in the Illuminati, Mothers of Darkness Castle, Chateau de Almaroy. And they couldn't give me, like it's exactly here. But I had made several trips to Europe, and I know that it's a very small place. And Belgium is a very small country. It's actually probably smaller than the county I live in. So I knew that if with a few basic things, knowing a few basic things about this castle, I should be able to find it. And indeed I did. And this is the castle, and it's near Munro. So I exposed this castle in 1991. I exposed it again in 95 with this book. This is artwork by Cisco. and people thought that she was just a housewife that had never been anywhere. And her artwork portraying this castle was so dead on. When I got a photograph of it, I was like blown away. Wow, the woman has actually been there. But anyway, in 1998, there was a big scandal, which most of you probably haven't heard. It almost brought down the Belgian government, because the people in Belgium discovered that across the board, most of these people in their government were Satanists. They were pedophiles. They were buggering kids. They were ritually killing kids. And so there was a couple days where 500,000 of these people in Brussels got out and protested their government to bring it down. And in order to put a lid on the scandal, the Illuminati had to kill 110 people who were assassinated. I used to have the paperwork that gave their photographs and all this information. It was like the Kennedy thing, you know, all the people that were killed to keep the lid on the Kennedy assassination.
Mike?
Okay, I come over here to the mic so I'll be able to be heard. So, because there was all this outrage against their Satanists in government and these rituals that they were doing and the hunts that they were doing, and it came out from some eyewitnesses stuff about this castle, and so the police knew that I had been exposing this castle. So Interpol asked Interpol in the United States to come interview me about the ritual murders that had been done in this castle. Okay, well, Interpol doesn't have their own people. What they do is it gets delegated to the FBI. So an FBI agent came to where I lived. At this time, I was living in Cisco's house. Cisco's husband, Eric, was downstairs at the table when the FBI agent came to the house. I was upstairs in my office working away. Call it divine intuition or the spirit telling me something. For some reason, I stopped what I was doing right at the right time. I was working, you know, on my research and writing. I stopped that on the computer and I went downstairs. And just as I came downstairs, Eric looked at me and he said, "There's an FBI agent that just went into the bathroom and he's been trying to get me to kick you out on the street. He's not sincere." So he gave me a heads up that. Now, if you were a police officer and you were going to investigate a murder, how would you go to investigate it? Would you try to get your star witness kicked out and homeless? That's how this FBI agent approached interviewing me, was to tell the people that I was living with to kick me out on the street. So I knew he wasn't sincere, and I came. He was in the bathroom. I came down at the right second. Perfect timing, because otherwise he'd have been, you know, out of the bathroom. So when he came out, I knew he wasn't sincere. I told him my witnesses didn't want to talk with him, and he was in over his head. And then he later came back kind of in a whiny tone and said, "Well, the Belgian police don't think that I was sincere in interviewing you." I was thinking, yeah, they got that right. Thank you.
Okay, it's crazy you just start talking about the Mothers of Darkness Chapel, because that's my question. And that's insane. And I've been thinking about what I was going to ask you, but my hometown is Orlando, and the more research I do into the Mothers of Darkness Chapel and the 1,000 Points of Light, I keep seeing Orlando as the first city. Orlando is the first city in this. And I'm curious as if you have any insight into what that would mean for the city of Orlando being my hometown. I have a lot of family there. Question number one right there, I guess. Go ahead.
Okay, Orlando is definitely an important programming center for the Illuminati, where they do the trauma-based mind control programming. So there would be a lot of high-level activity. I don't know of any particular Mother of Darkness temples there. I know Tulsa has some high-level Mother of Darkness stuff, and San Francisco has some high-level Mother of Darkness stuff. But I don't know anything about Orlando. But then there's a lot that I don't know, too.
Okay.
It would stand to reason if they got something on the West Coast and in the middle, they must have something on the East Coast. So maybe
Yeah.
that's where it's at.
Because that's a lot of things I do. It's just all about Orlando. Second question is about the music industry, and it's sort of I was watching the Prophecy Club. I watch your video all the time, like the ones like 2 hours long or whatever. I love the video, by the way. I was also watching a video on Bill Schobling. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
He says a lot of stuff about vampirism being related to the Holy Grail, and he claims that they're called the Holy Grail is their I don't know, you call it their clique, their gang, whatever. Are you familiar with that at all? Okay, now in one of the newest songs that just came out, there is a quote in the song. It's very popular by Jay-Z and one of these dude singers, and it says, "Sippeth from the cup till it runneth over, Holy Grail." Could I make any solid connection on that to the music industry right now? Because I feel that music today is one of the most widespread trauma-based mind controls happening to the youth, and I've watched it happen as I grow up, and it's very troubling to me because I am a musician myself. Could I make any solid connection on that and put that as an argument towards people? Look, this is proof right here. They're saying it in front of your face.
The topic of the Holy Grail is Illuminati topic. The head of the Illuminati, his name is William Cornelius Van Dyne. I have the genealogy on him, and in fact, depending on what happens in the near future, maybe in the next month I may come out with it. But when I go to talk about these subjects, people want to stone me. I'm talking about the Christians. I can't even raise the subject that this is the way the Illuminati believe without, I mean, for some reason they can't even handle the subject being raised. So, you know, but I don't see anybody with rocks yet in their hands, so maybe I'll survive tonight. But the thing of it is, this is their understanding, or this is the way they see things, is Jesus, who, you know, Yahashua, if you use the name that he actually had back then, Jesus being a Greek transliteration of it all. Yahashua was married to Mary Magdalene, and they had 2 children, and she was given exile in France, and from that lineage, that's the Holy Grail lineage, okay? And they have kept track of it. Now the Catholic Church didn't want any competition, and the Catholic Church tried to eradicate it. Not only the Catholic Church, but before the Catholic Church had power, the Romans tried to get rid of it, because the Roman Caesars didn't want competition either. So they came pretty close to eradicating it, but they managed to survive, you know, and then down through the years. And Van Dyne is from the head of the Illuminati is from that Holy Grail lineage. And so all during the Middle Ages and on, because they couldn't come out with the truth, they hid what was going on behind stories. And so the Holy Grail story was a way of telling parts of what was going on. And so it's the whole thing about the Holy Grail is Illuminati lineage. And addressing the whole thing about the music industry, here about a month ago, I went into Vitamin Shop. I stepped in the door, and this guy goes, "You're Fritz Springmeier." Yeah. And then he told me his story as a musician. He had a great, outstanding band, and he had the potential to be really big, like the Beatles or something. And the big boys approached him, and they go, "Hey, you want to be big? You know?" And he goes, "Yeah. Well, let's do a contract." They said, "Okay, are you willing to sell your soul to get success?" And he thought that they just meant, you know, like work your heart out or something like that, because like really it was like to be that right in your face with it. He was like it didn't compute. So he goes, "Yeah." Well, then when they came back, they were more explicit. They said, "Are you willing to sell your soul to Satan?" They just, before they were just right open in his face about what you can have all the success you want, your band and you, if you'll sell your soul to Satan. They were just right out in his face. And of course, he's a Christian, and he said, no, I don't want that. But his niece accepted it, and his niece is now a big star. So they're now just openly. But does that mean that these musicians are in the Illuminati? No, not these musicians. They're doing all this fancy stuff, you know, one eye, and they're not Illuminati. They're just, they've sold their soul to and some of them are mind controlled. They're program multiples that didn't have a choice about it. But they're not Illuminati. A few of them are Illuminati members. Paris Hilton, she comes from a elite bloodline. But most of the rest of these are just going along.
But that statement
because
could be, that statement he made about the Holy Grail, that's clearly an Illuminati statement, you know what I'm saying? So I can prove that. That's solid evidence, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the Illuminati bloodlines, and I anticipate, well, not only am I going to come out with more information on that, but I don't think that, from what I can understand, they want this stuff to start coming out. They've been leaking some of this stuff to people because they want the world to see that they're the legitimate rulers.
Yeah, the aliens and all that. I mean, it's crazy.
That makes me think of a song lyric by a really popular band, Tool. And it says, I sold my soul to make a record, and then you bought one, you dipshit. Sorry for the foul language.
Well, they're right in your face.
Yeah. I think of a couple bands where the lyrics specifically say, I sold my soul to become successful, I sold my soul to Satan, I sold my soul to make a record, things like that.
One time, interrupting you just for a minute. One time I turned on the television in the morning, MTV, and Anton LaVey was in this music video, and he was just saying, "You are my sexual slave. I control you," and stuff like this, right there in your face. I mean, this stuff is right there in our face. Once you catch on to what's going on, you'll see they're right there in our face with it. They're so arrogant with the power that they have that they don't even have to conceal it. Okay.
So my question pertains to money, and the $1 bill being the most widely circulated money. Do you know anything about it being designed as a magical talisman?
Well,
to harvest
money,
and
money is a magical thing.
And the prophecy with the bills, how you fold them, and it
Oh,
shows
well,
them
yeah,
up.
that's...
Allegedly, Aleister Crowley was part of the design
Well,
of the $1
they're
bill.
blaming a lot on Aleister Crowley for what they do. He seems to be the fall guy for a lot of what they're doing. Oh, Aleister Crowley did this. Well, it was more than Aleister Crowley.
So if you
His
know
name
anything
rhymes with holy.
specifically about the dollar being designed as a magical talisman and how it's used and to manifest reality or anything along those lines.
Well, it's all a magic trick. You're right. Money as they're creating it is a magic trick. And if you go in and look at their definitions of magic, that's all it is. They're creating something out of nothing. And the Illuminati aren't just rich. They're the people that have the means to create wealth. I mean, these are the people that are stockholders of the Fed, They're not just rich. They have the power to create money. So it's not that they need to become rich. They're way beyond that. So it's a magic trick.
And then, real quick, would you give your top few health recommendations, things that people can do to uplift themselves and benefit themselves physically and mentally?
So the question is if I could give some health tips. One thing about our bodies is we have a blood pH. It can be alkaline or acidic. The more acidic it gets, the more susceptible you are to any disease of any kind. But all of our food is designed, the modern American diet is designed to make us acidic, weaken us. Right. So if people will go back to raw fruits and veggies, those not only change you to be alkaline in your blood pH, but they do many, many other things. So raw diet is very powerful. And then of course your meats have a lot of toxins and stuff. People are eating way too much meats and way too many toxins, and your body can handle a certain amount of this, but it's just getting overwhelmed with. And so stay away from processed foods. There are certain things that are poisons. Sugar is a poison. It never ceases to amaze me. I see some kid bouncing off the wall, and his parent is over there. Oh, Johnny, have some candy, and the candy's pure sugar, you know. So it's like adding fuel to the fire, you know. It's unbelievable. And not only that, but that sugar's poison. They're destroying the kid's health. You know, so stay away as much as possible from refined sugar, refined flour. These things are really toxins. Just know that they have designed, the food industry is not out to help you. They have designed these things. These big multinational food corporations have specifically designed this to deteriorate our health, to stress us out. It's soft death, you know. It's like if you do 1,000 paper cuts or 10,000 paper cuts on a person, you'll kill them. You know, it's just a soft death where they're hitting us from so many different angles. So those are a few tips. There's many, many more things. But if you just did those few things, you would greatly help your health.
Now, Fritz, I didn't bring my book. I've had it about 10 years in my library, so I read it a long time ago, but I was really blown away by the depth of your knowledge. And so I have two questions, and I'd like maybe before you check out, I'll talk a little bit how you became an author and how you construct a book. Because a lot of us have knowledge and we're not, you know, putting it together, and really I think a lot of people need to be encouraged to do more of that because they know things. But can you tie in, and Doug help me out, what was the woman who was in the basement of the temple complex in Salt Lake? What was her name?
Oh,
that wasn't Cisco.
Sharon Jacobs.
Sharon Jacobs. Do you know anything about her? And do you know anything about the tie-in to the LDS Church, tied back in? Because I think Dr. Truott is a longtime friend of mine. I don't know if you know who that is, but people can write that down and look him up online, Dr. Truott. But he's, you know, blew me away that there are these catacombs down in there where they're doing ritualistic sacrifice with the Druid outfits on and all sorts of weird stuff. And so, but anyway, if you could elaborate on the LDS connection, that would be pretty cool.
How do you spell Truott?
O-T-T, T-R-U-E-O-T-T.
Okay. No. What was your first question?
The first one I just talked about, you know, how did you put all this together
okay, that was it.
as an author? Because
okay, and then we'll go to them. So first we'll discuss how I became an author, and then we'll discuss about the Mormon connection to the Illuminati and Illuminati rituals. Well, one thing is I had a burden, a calling. You know, I'm a man with a mission. So there was an enormous amount of motivation to do what I did. It took an enormous amount of research and an incredible amount, and I had to be willing to sacrifice everything that I had.
What got you on point?
I lost it in the process. I lost everything that I had, so I've sacrificed. So that's important is that a person has to have the motivation. Okay, I'm trying to give you your answer. I know it might not be what other people want.
It's okay.
But the motivation came first, and I was very concerned for humanity too. And then, in terms of the Bloodlines book, how that came about I knew that there were 13 bloodlines. Barry Smith had talked about 13 bloodlines. There had been somebody even before him that had been in the Satanism that had been dealing with a therapist that had talked about 13 bloodlines. There were various sources that had said there were 13, but nobody had said who they were, what they were. So in my first meeting with these women that had been teamed in the Illuminati, I printed out powerful families on a sheet of paper, and I said, would you circle the top 13? Okay. And so they did, except I didn't have them all. I didn't have the Van Dyne family because they're very low key. So I got those names, and then I got other sources too that once they gave me theirs, I had some other sources that were ex-Illuminati trying to get out, that also, you know, to verify, to try to get more verification. So then I came up with these top bloodlines, and then each month I focused writing an article, because I had a like 100-page newsletter back then in '92, and so I wrote an article on each family. So, you know, if you look at my Bloodlines books, there's like 15 chapters, so you can extrapolate. That was 15 months, and I focused on each family. And then when I got done with those articles, someone said, you know what, you should combine all of those into a book. And so that's how the book came about. Now, where this might apply to all of you is, if you're on a big project, do baby steps. Get motivated, get something done. Do this, break it down into manageable steps. Don't try in your head thinking, okay, I'm going to do this whole thing, and overwhelm your mind. Break it down into manageable pieces and baby step your way through. Because that's how the Bloodlines book got done. Okay, that's the first question. Next question is about Mormonism and the Illuminati. The Mormon hierarchy is all from one bloodline. It's from that Holy Grail bloodline that we were talking about. They tie in with the Illuminati and are directly controlled by the Illuminati. Mormonism is. And Mormonism is really, in essence, a high rite of Freemasonry or witchcraft. And indeed, a number of these temples, the basements underneath them, are Illuminati temples. So going to the one that was built in Portland, it was like 1990 is when they completed the Portland Mormon temple in Lake Oswego. And they had an open house for like 4 or 5 days that anybody in the world could come and take a tour through the entire temple. Of course, they're not going to take you down to where the Illuminati has their temple underneath. And understand, once everybody's gone through for that week, it's sealed off, it's holy, nobody can come onto it. So it's a nice way of inoculating the public to think, hey, I've seen that. There's nothing strange there. I've been through the whole temple. Because they take you on a tour of what you think is the whole temple. Okay, well, there was a man, Conrad Sutholm, he had been an elder in the Mormons, and he and I had been in ministry together. And because he was an ex-Mormon elder, he was especially interested in this temple that they were building. Plus, he was an architect. Now, anytime you build a building like that, the blueprints are public record, and anybody can inspect them. So, as an architect, he should have been allowed in to look at them, right? He kept trying and trying and trying to look at the blueprints, and the city government there in Lake Oswego kept stiff-arming him, refusing him. Finally, they got tired and said, okay, we'll give you 15 minutes. And then they gave him somebody right on his shoulder to hurry him and to hassle him the whole time that he was trying to look at the blueprints. But Conrad's really intelligent. He's a good architect. He opens up these blueprints and whoa, the height of the Moroni, I call it Moroni Baloney, the gold
Angel Moroni,
Moroni at the top of the thing. That whole steeple was way beyond city code. It was the city of Lake Oswego had given them a free pass on building something that was higher than the city code. And then he noticed too that in the basement they had this huge, I can't even remember how thick the basement walls were. The foundation walls were like 2 yards thick, 3 yards thick. It was something way beyond the greatest earthquake would ever need. You know, it was just like, this basement doesn't even make sense. You know, it was like really suspicious. So they harassed him, and he stopped for the day, but then he came back the next day. And when he started to look at the blueprints, they had substituted in a new sheet for the sheet that he had seen where code had been broken, and this time the dimension had the right figure.
Wow.
So for some reason, I don't know how, Lake Oswego happens to be one of those rich suburbs where there's a lot of these Illuminati type people live in it, you know. So it's probably a good location for them to build a temple, because probably everybody's, you know, in the network or in the Illuminati or whatever, and that's in power in that town, because it's a rich town. So the next thing that I learned about it was I had Cisco, and I had two youngsters that she had programmed, husband and wife that had been teenagers that she had participated in programming and been in rituals, and we were having a meal together, and they all started talking about the rituals in the basement in that Mormon temple. Oh boy. I was just fortunate to be the little bird listening in on all of this, you know. But if we hadn't brought different people together that had been involved together, they wouldn't have opened up and talked amongst themselves, and I wouldn't have heard about it, you know, because they wouldn't have opened up to me, but to themselves they had the conversation.
Was it mostly child sexual perversion, or was it actually ritualistic? Actually
Rituals,
execution of children and this kind
Well,
of
one of the big things that they do is they have an arena where they have gladiator fights to the death. And the people that observe it can't be seen by the gladiators, but they have duels to the death in there. That's one of the, besides your standard satanic rituals.
Wow.
Okay, next question.
Okay, Fritz, a few
Thank you.
fairly easy ones here. First of all, what did the Illuminati call themselves?
They actually call themselves the Illuminati. People think I invented that term. They get angry that I use that term. These people that I was bringing out, Illuminati, that's what they called it. But they have a number of other names. They'll call it the Circle. They'll call it the Family, the Mariah Conquering Wind. There might be a few others too, but so they have some inside names. But overall, that's it. And the reason why they call themselves the Illuminati is they're illumined to divinity. They're illumined to godhood. They believe that they're gods. You know, they have done the rituals. They've become on a higher plane, and we're down here.
Okay, you said that they had 6 systems that they used to control us. Besides education and health, what were the other 4?
Okay. They have a system for truth, which is the church. They have a system, the market system, and then they have this. It's several systems tied up together. It's health and a couple other systems, and then there's the political system. And that's 4. See, the other 2 is it's equity. It's not markets, but it's an equity system. Is the 5th one, and it deals with finance, but it's thanks. And then let's see, what's the other one? I mentioned did I mention I mentioned the church, right? Okay, well, another system is the media system.
Okay, in your book, amongst a lot of other revelations, the one I found most fascinating was on page 205. And you mentioned this castle near Muno, okay, Mother of Darkness Castle. Okay, and it says, and you state here, this is a very striking thing, I'll quote, "In that castle is a cathedral, and in that cathedral's basement a little baby is sacrificed daily."
There was a police officer a Belgian police officer, and he saw a suspicious car full of children going into this castle, and he stopped it, and immediately his superiors got on him and said, "You leave that alone." He was not to investigate. There's been a number of sources, besides my Illuminati sources, there have been a number of sources that have talked about how children are being brought in on a regular basis. But since I exposed it, my latest, what I've heard in the last year, is they stopped doing rituals and stuff there. They moved.
Now, what poll were they using to get these children?
It's not hard to get children. There's so many children around the world that can be. A lot of these were actually gotten through Europe, but if they didn't have enough sources in Europe, you can get all the babies you want from places like Latin America. There's no shortage of babies. Absolutely none at all. But you know, think of Eastern Europe and places like the Ukraine where people are starving, and they're kicking out lots of extra babies. Some of those people are going to sell their kids, you know, their babies. They don't care. I mean, so we get some good money for the rest of the family survive. You know, so there's, and then some of them come from their brooders. They have breeder families that produce kids for sacrifice. So there's, if you see all the ways that they can get children, there's absolutely no shortage of children.
And there's no reason to believe they stopped doing it and moved somewhere else.
No, in fact, Cisco took me around Oregon, and she said, "See that there and see that there," and she took me around and showed me the whole system where they moved the children. You know, and then other people have given me information too. So it's not hard to acquire these children. It sounds fantastic, but then when you know all the sources that they have and how many people are, you know, want to get rid of their kids. I mean, look at how many abortions are. You know, if you think of how many abortions there are all the time, think of some of those families that could have gotten an abortion, but they realized, oh, well, why get an abortion? We can sell the child for thousands of dollars. You see what I mean? Okay. Was that all your questions?
No, but
no, you can ask another one.
Just another one. I got a million, so we'll be here all night. But another one.
Hold up the line over there.
You mentioned Anton LaVey, and my understanding of the Church of Satan was just that Anton LaVey was sort of a hedonistic libertarian type. Okay, and there wasn't a whole lot of harm done through his church. Is it your contention that it's different than that?
You know, the best kept secret is right out in front of you. And he came across as a total buffoon, like he was a circus actor. There was a lot more to him. In fact, when I was in prison, his son contacted me because his son hated his father because all of his kids had been subjected to trauma-based mind control or program multiples, had been traumatized, you know. He was a lot more nastier and he was a lot more connected than what he made out to be. And so because he was in the public eye and making Satanism, he had notoriety and he was making Satanism famous, you know, he played like he was just a circus guy and this is my cult I created and, you know, do what thou wilt. But he was more connected than one would realize. And his one of his right-hand men, Michael Aquino, then broke off from him and created the Temple of Set, connected with military intelligence, connected with this mind control, trauma-based mind control. Those people were really nasty.
Now, recently he's been exposed by Mark Passio, who apparently was very closely associated with him as well, right?
Yeah, and I've met some other high priest, ex-high priest of his church, and they've told me what it was like. Yeah, it was a nasty organization, and so he just came off with an image. That was his public image, so that people thought he was harmless.
Hi.
Hi.
So I come from a Christian background as well. I am a Christian. And I actually went to school of ministry for 5 years.
Wow.
In Bible college. And I was thinking about being a minister. I thought I was going to be like the next Joyce Myers or something. You know? And that's, you know. But in the church, it used to drive me crazy because I saw these things that I didn't really like about the church, and I just thought I would be different and bring some difference into that. But I wanted to share with everybody that I've never seen the fight between good and evil like I have since I woke up. It's very real. And that actually is good for me because I know where to fight. You know, when you're unaware, you don't really see any of that stuff, and you can't direct it. So anyway, one of my questions was about the blood sacrifice. I know they drink the blood, and the Bible says life is in the blood. Why do they drink the blood? To get youth?
Yeah, you're on the right track. They, the qualities, you know, you're getting the life from the person. You're taking the life force from the person. That's a good answer right there.
Okay. Okay.
And,
So that was.
I mean, it has a lot of. There's other reasons. If you want to initiate someone into a gang, right? Some of you are familiar with how they do it. If you want to come into a gang, they tell that person that wants to join, go out and do that crime. You know, go out and shoot that old grandmother there. Okay, when you do crimes with other people, it ties you together. So by doing a human sacrifice together, it bonds the covenant together. So there's other reasons to why they do the blood sacrifices, but what you said right there is a really good one, and that is the life is in the blood. And what's really shocking is in working with these people, you know, I came to realize that a lot of these Illuminati kingpins who are Christian ministers, these people know the Bible better than most of us.
Right.
So does the devil.
Yeah, exactly. They know it, and they just turn what was meant for good for evil. You know.
Okay, so well, first of all, I've got one more thing to say,
Yeah.
but
Take your time.
I do have a friend who I've met that's ex MK Ultra, and we talk almost every day, and she's a Christian now, and she shared with me her experiences, and yes, there's the sex-based trauma, there's, you know, violence, and they make you watch blood sacrifices, and they do traumatize you to the point where kind of you have to split from that. You can't be there, so you have to create something else to be there, and then you put that personality in the back, and you do become, she explained it just like that, as a robot. You become like a robot, and everything is more, your sense of sight, your sense of memory, your sense of hearing, everything becomes amplified, which is great for a human reporter. And so that's what they use them for in societies, to go through and watch and then report and all sorts of things. And it is satanic, and she was involved in that, and they showed her levels of that. So I mean, this is all real, good versus evil, angels and demons, the whole nine. It's there. So I wanted to just say that, and then also the other thing was, okay. Some people may think this is weird, but I heard this thing on the radio. I listen to internet blog talk and stuff all the time. I have my own show. And some guy came on and he was bragging about how they sacrifice Gentile children and they drink the blood. And he was laughing and he's like, nobody's going to believe, you know, that we even do this. But I'm going to say it, and you guys are just going to mock it and not believe it. Because we actually take the organs and we sell them to places like McDonald's and stuff afterwards, and we put it into food. And I was like, oh my God. Because, you know, I would have years ago, if I heard that, it wouldn't have even I would have been like, no way. But now I'm like, that probably does happen. Do you know anything about that, or?
Syntrex?
I have not seen anything that is factual that would substantiate that. I know that occasionally people make those kind of allegations, but I have not seen anything factual that fast food places, you know, like McDonald's, you know, at one point they were saying, you know, that they put worms in the meat. You know, well, that might have been someone from Burger King saying that about McDonald's, you know. Who knows?
Except the guy's finger they found in the chili, the white chili. I said it wasn't they found just the finger, that was, everything else was in the chili. That was just the part that didn't get ground up good enough.
Which finger, Turtle?
I don't know.
So, you know, I can't address whether that's happening or not.
You've just never heard on that.
Well, I have heard people make those kind of things, but and as far as somebody saying we're sacrificing Goyim kids, that almost comes across like maybe somebody who doesn't like the Jews getting on there to try to create anti-Semitism. Who knows what the answer is on what the underlying reality is on all of that. That's the best I can say to address that.
The Van Dyne family are from the Netherlands?
Yes, originally, but in 1830, Belgium seceded from the United Netherlands and created their own country, and so now they're Belgian.
How do you know that the Rothschilds and Rockefellers aren't the top strata of the network, or that there's not a third pyramid above the second pyramid that you mentioned?
Just from, you know, how do I know all this? It's just from many different sources.
How do you know that there's not something beyond what you know with regard to you know, basically what I asked?
I don't know how to address your question, except it's like trying to prove a non-event. You know, if somebody said, if I said, okay, you went to Burger King on November 3rd, 1969. Now, how's he going to prove that it didn't happen? I mean, you know, how do you prove that there isn't something else out there, you know? But I can say I've looked at these things from a lot of different angles with hundreds of informants trying to filter through what people are saying, checking things. I've been researching this for over 3 decades, over 30 years, you know, and these are my conclusions. If you want to accept it, you can, and if you want to go do some research and find another pyramid, power to you, you know. You can certainly find a lot of people out there that are going to give you all kinds of crazy ideas, but I can guarantee you, you know, and when it comes to giving factual, look at my Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Before that book came out, people were using the pronoun they, but nobody was explaining in detail who they were. You know, so, you know, you're welcome to try to prove me wrong, but I stand by my research, and that's all I can say, is I've researched it to the point that, and I don't believe in putting out speculation, right? So, I don't know how to address it more than that, is that's what's there. You know, that's like saying, that's like somebody's gone to Africa and said, these are the animals there, and somebody's saying, well, how do you know that there aren't these other animals? Well, maybe there are. But I went there and I spent 30 years, and those are the animals that were there.
And you would place the Rockefellers in the top pyramid or at the top strata of the network?
7 top families. Within those 7 families, there's 3 inner circle families. There's always been, you'll go back in my writing, you'll see I've talked about 3 inner circle families. And those are Rockefeller, Rothschild, and Van Dyne right now. And And if you go back and you look at the Holy Grail, you will, and this is stuff that I haven't written on yet, but if you go back and look at the genealogies of the Sassoons, which is a Jewish family that's interbred with the Rothschilds, you see that their genealogy goes back to this Grail genealogy. So the Rothschilds have been interbred into this Grail lineage too. So ultimately you might say that the top family within the Illuminati is the Grail lineage, the Holy Blood lineage that they believe, and this is what they believe, okay, so don't stone me, but they believe that they have both blood from Lucifer and Christ. So they're like double empowered. You know, they got the good and the bad deeds, the balance there.
So I asked that because, you know, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds are relatively new money, you know, 200 years, 100 years, compared to the kind of time spans you're talking about.
Right.
And I assume that's going back to Sumer. You mentioned Egypt and Babylon, but...
Well, the Rothschild secret genealogy books, and this is what a Rothschild told me, trace back to Nimrod. So see, they're not a new family of power, but their money, Van Dyne, I have the exact date when he met Amschel Bauer, or what became Rothschild. I have the date when they met, and Van Dyne, because of certain reasons, brought him in and said, okay, let's make you one of the team here. So you will notice that at certain points in history, the Illuminati have said, okay, the Astor family, we're gonna promote them, you know, and then they take off. And that's what happened, is they got the green light, they were brought into things, but it was their lineage, they already had the lineage. So it wasn't like they were outside of the elite bloodlines, it's just that they hadn't been elevated to where they were rich and powerful.
You're familiar with perhaps the book, it's a relatively short book about how the Swiss banks were founded by the Knights Templar?
Right, the Knights Templars were the original bankers in Europe, and the Knights Templars were the organization that was set up, the front organization that was set up to protect this bloodline, and behind them was the Priory of Zion.
That's why there's the association with the Grail and the Templars.
Exactly.
Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
Exactly.
Coming back at you.
Okay.
So I met a guy over in Lincoln, Nebraska, and he wrote a book called Down the Rabbit Hole. And
Okay.
he was brought up in a satanic family.
Okay.
And he claims, when I talked to him personally, that there's over 2,000 kids a day that disappear just in this country. So,
That's believable.
yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but if anybody wants to verify that on their own, I think it's interesting fact.
Yeah, the police are totally dirty. I've had a number of policemen that were not dirty that have told me how there was evidence of satanic rituals where people were being sacrificed and other stuff come in, and then the police departments, you know, the evidence is lost. It's buried. You know, so supposedly we don't even have satanic rituals in this country. You know, I have another, for a moment, he was a friend of mine. He was a private eye and private detective, and he had a few people that worked with him. And so, you know, he networked with me on where the rituals were and whatnot. And he went out to a place out in the desert, where in the mountains, where the Illuminati do a ritual. And through binoculars, he and his guys were tracking the human sacrifice. And guess who was running security for the Illuminati human sacrifice ritual? It was the sheriff department. So this is what we have to contend with. You know, this is why, you know, you've got people in the FBI that are dirty. I mean, the guy that comes to investigate these murders, and look how he did it, you know? And that's why we don't hear of any of this.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of stuff with Columbine along those lines.
Yeah.
But this guy's name is David Schurter, and he wrote the book. It's on Amazon, and his mother called Amazon because his parents are still Satanists, and said, take that book out of Amazon. And they said, sorry, man, we got to get a court order to do that. You know, we have a relationship with your son. You know, so it's kind of interesting. You were talking about Anthony LaVey and Aquino. Aquino had a military position on the Presidio naval base below San Francisco.
And even after he was exposed, you know, I did heavy duty exposure of him and everything. They promoted him to general.
Right. and
from colonel to general.
That same.
They care less about their image.
Right.
And what's really strange, okay, I went to West Point, United States Military Academy, and then my dad had been in Pershing Rifles when he was being trained to be an officer, where they did all of the fancy work with the guns, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Marching. You know.
So I practiced with a whole bunch of guys to do that. We were really good. Those guys were incredible. They were like acrobats. They were really good, impressive with what, you know, I was okay, but some of those guys, what they could do, twirl their guns, were, you know, that West Point would not let us perform, and the reason why is because if anything went wrong, it would tarnish their reputation. And yet they take someone like Michael Aquino, who's a known Satanist, known to be buggering little boys. There were court things brought against him, witnesses about him buggering little boys, all that dirt, and still promote him to general. What's that tell you? So much for their great image.
And the Gorbachev and Feinstein connection to the Presidio?
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. Gorbachev has an office there. He's CEO
exactly.
of a company called Green Cross.
Exactly.
And he's there at this time.
Yeah.
He's on the Presidio naval base.
Yeah,
Gorbachev, the ex-prime minister of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, got to wonder about that stuff. So, the 13 family. I was asking you earlier about 7 families. Are the 7 families a subset of the 13 families in your book? Is it the same family?
No. What happened is up until they passed the baton to the new generation of leaders. You know, the older generation, David Rockefeller and Jacob Rothschild and William Van Dyne, these people were of a different mindset, right? And when they gave the new generation, turned it over to them, the new generation decided, you know, there's a lot of corruption out here. For instance, the bankers that have been assassinated, that's the Illuminati assassinating these bankers. Why? Is because these bankers are out of control. Some of these guys they're robbing their banks, they're robbing the public, they're just out of control, you know, they're greedy bastards. And the Illuminati, the hierarchy of the Illuminati is like, we don't want these kind of people in there. You know, if you're not going to shape up, if you're not going to be responsible people, you're out of here. And that's where these bankers are being off. So what they did is they decided to consolidate. It's just the same thing that the military does. Make yourself mean and lean. You know, cut out all the fat. Have you ever seen efficiency experts go through a company? Anything that's inefficient, they get rid of. Well, they're getting rid of all the inefficiency, all of the bloodlines that they thought, like the Bush, the bunch of characters. Hey, you're kicked to the curb. You're out of here. They did that to the entire 700 fraternal clubs, like the Order of the Skull and Bones. They used to be Illuminati. Illuminati said, you're out of here. We don't want you anymore. So
How long ago was that?
that's the last few years.
Wow.
It's all new stuff.
Last question, Chris. From here on out, can we have each person do one question, and then this will be it? Well, Johnny will be the last question, and I have one question, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I
Cool.
believe the
5, 6 more.
21st century is they want to, become the rightful leaders of their. So Alice Bailey wrote that book in the 1920s called The Externalization of the Hierarchy. Do you think that book has merit on them taking over in the 21st century and becoming out in the open officially?
I may be stand corrected here, but I think it was published in 1959.
Okay,
But,
fair enough.
But her book is dead on right. She was Illuminati. That's exactly what they're doing. It's externalization of the hierarchy. And one of the reasons why they're working with, why I have some of the insiders working with me, is they want the public to know who they are and that they have this power. You know, they're externalizing things, and they feel comfortable that their power is so deeply embedded, nobody can rock the boat. And also they have these things coming down on our heads where a lot of us aren't going to be alive in a few years anyway, so what do they care? They have made provisions to protect themselves, and yeah, her book definitely has merit.
Okay, I just gave Lisa this set. I'm going to give one to you. It's regarding 4 pages on the Bohemian Grove, human sacrifices there. We have 2 people over there participating in the human sacrifices and cannibalism of children there. And also John Bunny Ramsey. So I'd like to give this to you. And my book, I just released it. 33 Masons cover-ups regarding child abuse, Satanism, murder, targeted individuals, CIA mind control, and murder in America. And so it kind of ties in all the things you've been working on for decades. And it's a wonderful time to be here. Time is just can't believe it. So there you go. Would you please comment on Bohemian Grove, doing human sacrifice there, and also what do you know about John Bonet? Because we've identified the murderer. 17 years ago, he was identified as her half-brother, much older.
She was in a family of, one of these families that practiced trauma-based mind control. She was a victim of trauma-based mind control. And, she was snuffed out. They take little girls like that and they turn them into, like she was performer, and she would have been a sexual slave and everything if she had been allowed to live. As far as the Bohemian Grove, to the best of my knowledge, I think some years they actually use a dummy, and then some years they actually use a child. So the cremation and care ceremony can vary. But the image that they give out to the world is that there's just a bunch of old men. They come and, they pee on the trees and they have fun, but they do a lot more than that. And they do have sexual slaves come in that service them. They do discuss important issues, and some decisions have been made there. So it's more than they let on. But even if the child that they sacrifice is not a real child, if you stood in the audience and you hear these leaders, these are the leaders of our country, and they're shouting for this child to be killed, the bloodlust that you pick up, the spirit of bloodlust, shows you what these men are all about.
Right.
Whether it's a real child or not, they're full of bloodlust.
Just real quick, because I might have misheard you. Did you mention the red plum currency that was
Red
replacing?
plum.
Red plum. Thank you. I just wanted to check that one
Right.
from my research. What I wanted to ask you though,
I've been exposing it, by the way. The guy who told me that, he said, "Fritz, don't talk about this. They're really sensitive about it." So,
What is it? What is the red plum
so
currency?
within a few months, what was I doing?
What is it? Is it a...
So I don't know if they're so sensitive that maybe that will stop them from doing it. I've noticed a lot of things in the past that I exposed, like I exposed an Illuminati community in Bend, Oregon, and they all moved out. Okay, so sometimes I do get a reaction from exposing things, and then some things that I've exposed, it's like I don't see any reaction. It's like, ho hum, who's this guy? I'm like a fly on an elephant, they just ignore me. So I don't know if exposing the red plum like I have publicly on radio shows like Liberty Lisa's show. I don't know if I talked about it on your show. How many times have I been on your show? 2 or 3?
Yeah, about 3 times.
3 times. So I've talked on blog radio a number of times about it. And then one guy goes, "Well, why haven't I heard about this before?" people, I'm giving you guys information that nobody else has told before, you
Right.
know? So that's why you're hearing it, you know?
Speaking of your unique information, I had heard that the Rockefellers were actually an extension of the Rothschild family, and I wanted to just clear that one up real quick.
Yeah, I had heard
curious how
that
they
from a number of
elevate,
sources
like,
too.
families already.
And I don't know, you know, that's something that I need to pursue further, because it's very possible that there is a tie back in there. That's one thing that I should continue researching, because I don't have that cleared up in my mind. But they are a powerful family in their own right now, and this new generation, you know, it was just like recently someone who's trauma-based mind control victim who's been used as a sexual slave, you know, she's sending me all this information of these young, you know, we're talking about 20-year-olds, Rockefellers and Rothschilds that had been having relationships with her. And so they're Rothschilds, Rockefellers, they're all like in the same mix, you know, the same group, yeah, same clique. But I can't say anything definitive about that.
Like certain families to elevate, and when, that sort of mystifies me. Like you mentioned, the Astors.
Why have they picked? These families had to have the right blood to begin with, and then for various internal reasons, they have decided. Now, like the Collins family was very powerful with Druidic magic, and they wanted to pull that magic in to the Illuminati, you know. So for whatever these families had that they thought would be useful, and then where they were, you know, some of these families show that they have good potential. So then they're like, okay, let's keep moving them forward. They got the potential to be something. And it's a dog-eat-dog world, you know, for them.
What is that red plum you were mentioning?
That was the name of this secret currency that the Chinese hope to introduce. Like the euro is for Europe, the red plum currency would be for East Asia. There would be 7 Asian countries and China using it. They tried to make a deal with Japan, and Japan was like Great Britain in terms of the euro. You know, the British rejected the euro, and the Japanese said, no, we want to keep our yen. So the Japanese rejected joining the thing. But then the Japanese tend to be our ally, you know. So that makes sense that they wouldn't want to stab us in the back.
Speaking about the Collins family, one of the first people I researched when I started really researching this whole thing was Johnny Todd. I was curious, thoughts on Johnny Todd? I think you've met him before, talked with the man. I'm just curious about that.
When I listened to Johnny Todd's tapes, this was back like 1990, I was just like amazed. I had been doing thousands of hours of research, and I know what it takes to get to a certain point where you understand this, you understand that. And when somebody can come along and hit all of the high points and be accurate, you know that they have to be an insider. Now, bear in mind, like I've said, these people that are members of the Illuminati have undergone trauma-based mind control. So their minds have been fractured and programmed. So one of the common things about someone who's a program multiple is they'll be mixed up about who their parent was. You know, one day they'll say their parent is this, the next day they'll say their parent is that, the next day is this. They're all over the place on something simple that you and I are not going to be confused at all about. Johnny Todd, when he went out and gave talks around the United States, he was confused about who his parents were. That, to me, that gave validity to who he was.
Right.
For everybody else, the Christians out there who didn't know anything about this, they're like, oh, well, the guy's unreliable. he's inconsistent about his parents. He said this and that. So they see that the guy's a liar and inconsistent. I see it backing up his story. And I tried to help him after he went to prison. I sent him money and clothes, and eventually he ended up dying in prison. So, but what he was trying to warn us about was true. Was everything he said true? I can't verify or validate that, but I can say that the man was sincere in trying to wake us up. And he actually, overall, I think, did a lot of good. And so I'm really grateful that he came out and did what he did. Yes.
Why do you believe you're still alive?
One is the best answer is the hand of God. There's been a whole number of things that happened that I look back and I go, how did I get through that? And obviously the hand of God protected me. And that, in short, is the best answer. Another thing, too, though, that I might tack on here is getting back to, if I was really at this stage important to, if I was really high on their priority to kill, they would eventually probably manage to do it. I don't know, unless God was super protective. But all of the disciples, or the major apostles, with one exception, John, all of them were martyred. Yep. So, even the closest to Christ ended up eventually getting martyred. In fact, it might happen to me yet. It's not over until it's over. We'll see if I die a natural death or not, But there have been attempts on my life, but they've all failed. And some of them I don't even know. It was just like God brought me through miraculously. But I don't feel any pressure from the hierarchy to do anything to me. Where I have the most threat would be some low-level, low-life Satanist in some low-level coven who wants to make a name for himself, like they killed Gandhi. Some low-life out here who wants to, because the hierarchy at this time, from my interaction with my inside sources, they're basically, have the attitude of let them be, and we're all of us that are doing this, we're going to get our comeuppance as far as they're concerned at some point. Our days are numbered, and so I'm just making the best with what time I have left.
All right. So to kind of wrap it up, I have a couple questions, and then we'll kind of get out of here and break down and get to talk to you personally. But first things first, did you know that the cremation and care ceremony happened in 1913 at Red Rocks? Now, not a lot of people know that until they come through
They
here.
have a plaque. They have a
Do you know
plaque.
that?
Red Rocks here in Colorado?
It says on Red Rocks is
There's a plaque.
on their
I have a
plaque.
picture
It
of
says
it. There's a plaque.
Red Rocks has a plaque. And their first event is 1910. I don't know what that one was. The second event is June 26th or 29th, and it was the cremation of care and the dawning of the arrival of prosperity, 1913, the same year as the creation of the Federal Reserve and the creation of the income tax. I don't know if you knew that connection. Or anyone in this room, for that matter.
No, as far as I knew, the Bohemian Grove started out as a California affair. So the idea that they would come out here to Colorado kind of blows me away, because from the start, it started out to be Californians, and then they expanded it to include larger elite. So that's brand new
Well,
to
there
me.
we go. I can always help teach somebody new something
See?
about everything each day. My other question, this one's from somebody who wasn't here. Shaw didn't have a chance to make it, but he wanted to ask, could you please confirm if the CFR, the Bilderberg Group, or the Bohemian Grove is the head of the American faction of the Illuminati? Shaw wanted to know.
The Bilderbergers have a governing body, and that governing body is all Illuminati. And a lot of the people that attend the Bilderbergers are Illuminati, but not 100%. Likewise, the CFR, CFR is lower level than the Bilderbergers. Bilderbergers is a couple levels higher than CFR.
That's kind of what he was kind of asking, which.
Yeah. There's a lot of direct orders given. Like my source will tell me, okay, today we're going to tell Obama to do such and such, and then I'll watch the news, and the next day he'll be doing what they told him to do. Wow. You know, so a lot of it's direct. So yeah, the Bilderbergers is higher level. It's international, and
so you'd say Bilderberger, then CFR, then Bohemian, or is Bohemian even in there, or?
In terms of hierarchy organizations, Bohemian Grove's not in there.
Okay. And then my last point in question was, I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and I know you were from Orlando, and you had some from Orlando. Yeah. Are you familiar with any of the connections with Satanism and the kids from Boys Town, the Franklin cover-up, that whole Satanist ring that got busted open in the late '80s, early '90s? Any comment on Omaha, the connection there?
Well, that book, John DeCamp's book, is right on. Excuse me. And you know what's going on with Boys Town and so forth. I mean, that's the way they work. And Omaha, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, there's this whole history of Omaha. It's like, you know, there's certain towns, the foundations and who's controlling them and who's running them. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but there's this whole thing that of Omaha. It's been probably, as you know, a nasty town from the beginning.
Yep. And then the last point is just another point of information for you. One of the heads of, we believe, here in Denver was Pat Sullivan, and he got caught giving meth for sex here in Denver, and he was a high up sheriff here in Colorado, had a prison even named after him. And then he ends up going to jail for 17 days. He just recently broke his probation. They only gave him a 3-month extension for failing a drug test. Anyone else, you know, they would have slapped another whole year on. And so, any comment on these current talking heads being involved in this at all?
Oh yeah, they're all across the board controlled. They've all, anybody in a position in front of the public that's got any control is compromised. They're either directly part of it or they've been blackmailed. So the whole thing, everybody with any power in this state, I can guarantee you, is controlled by them. And in fact, if we're not too far towards the end of I'll give you a little bit of a more.
He's got one more question, and then let's wrap it up here in the next 5 to 10 here. So.
Okay. Let's see if I can condense this down then. I have a friend who was following my research, and there was a 19-year-old young man that said, my father's the head of the Freemasons here in this state. Would you like to come in and see his files? And my friend took him up on it, came in and saw the files. He had file cabinets. In those files, anybody of power or significance in that state, there were files that could send them to prison. I mean, they had pictures of them, pedophilia and other stuff. They were all blackmailed. They were all controlled. Nobody without exception in that state. It blew his mind. It totally blew his mind. That's the short version of the story. So the point I'm making is I even have a friend who's gone in and visually seen, you know, what I'm telling you, that all of these people are controlled across the board.
Thank you. And he's got one last question, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you very much for coming out to Denver.
My question is, do you have any general advice for how to, say, stay out of the Illuminati, for lack of a better term? I mean, not to put too fine a point.
Well, you have to be born into it. And they do take people like Henry Kissinger, who was a lapdog who kissed them and was a good gopher for years, until finally they decided to let Henry in, you know, and I gave his initiation date in some recent article I wrote. So there are a few people that are brought in from the outside, but they're not, you know, we don't have any, they're not wanting to recruit us. And if anybody says that they got recruited into the Illuminati because they were some low-level occultist, it was probably being brought into some group that's just pretending, making pretensions. Because there's a number of groups like certain Rosicrucian groups that say, well, we got the Order of Illuminati in our Rosicrucian fraternity, but that's not the real Illuminati. That's just them, you know, trying to gain members. You know, okay, we're going to make you something, you know, and people like to be something, part of something that's got a big name. But no, there's no fear or no way that we're going to be recruited.
So if anybody has any more other questions, where can they find you online?
Oh, very good. If you're not afraid of Facebook, I put an article up almost every day that's very powerful. Inside information to give you hope, answers, whatnot. If you don't feel comfortable with that, you know, you can go to my website, pentracks.com, where they sell my books, and so Pentracks, pentracks.com, pentracks.com.
Bruce, I have a yes or no question.
Okay, last question.
Is the bloodline Rh negative?
I think that's disinformation. I really do. And there's all this concern that everybody who's Rh negative is a reptilian. That's disinformation.
Thank you. All right. Let's end on that. Thanks a lot, Fritz. Give it up. If anybody hasn't had a chance to make a donation, I'll have the box up here. We really thank him. Ending on that note, watch out for reptile land. Illuminati land is real. Reptile land, not so real. We like to find fact and fiction, truth and justice here at We Are Change Colorado. Yeah. Thanks for watching this to the end if you did. Thanks for staying to the end if you did. Thanks very much. We'll be here every single Monday with this non-GMO potluck and a meeting. Thanks for coming out tonight, everybody.
What a night.